Hello everybody, welcome back to Hard Enduro Media, episode 2 of Basic Maintenance. So we're in the lockdown workshop, back with the 300 TPI. My bike is 2019, and in the first episode I've been to a practice ride at Teesside with dirt bike action. The bike had got quite dirty, so it was time for a good clean and some basic maintenance when we brought the bike back from the practice day. So in the first episode we looked at cleaning the bike, drying the bike off, getting the bike running, and then bringing it into the workshop, the studio, once it's fairly clean, then looking at a more detailed clean, checking those parts for wear. And we started with the front of the bike. We had the wheel out, cleaned the forks down, we cleaned the brake caliper out, we had the headlight mask off, we also took the mudguard off as well, got that clean, there was some dirt under there. We checked the wiring behind the headlight mask. We also looked at all the controls on the handlebars, the throttle, make sure nothing was sticking, the switch gear, levers, make sure they were lubricated as well. So quite a bit of work in the front end on its own. But we're now on to episode 2 and we're looking at the sort of central area of the bike. Now I've already done some filming in relation to this sort of area, and as you can see it's fairly clean at the moment now. It's a lot cleaner than what it was. Just to sort of put you in the picture as to what happened, we did the filming the early part of the week. When I started reviewing all the video footage, the audio was quite bad because of the acoustics in the studio here, so I've had to invest in some acoustic panels which are now on the wall. So that's where we are at the moment. We've got the studio sounding a lot better. So with that to one side, what we're going to do in this episode is look at the area between the radiators and the back of the airbox. So all this sort of central area here. So we started by taking the tank off, so it exposed all the electrics and the radiators. You can see everything what's there. And then we looked at taking the exhaust off as well. Now once you take the tank off and the exhaust off, it reveals a lot of areas where you can't get into by sort of normal cleaning. Particularly down by the power valve cover, that usually gets quite grimy down there, and directly under the tank. Now if you take your tank off and it's absolutely filthy still, then my suggestion is you take it back outside and you give it another wash, get a hose pipe on there with a brush and soap and get it dried off again, either with the airline or a leaf blower, one of those things. Now you'll see on my bike I'm running these Polysport plastic case savers. I've got one on the clutch and I've also got one on the ignition cover as well. Now this was the first time that I've taken these covers off. Now they can hold quite a lot of dirt if you're riding in muddy conditions all the time. The majority of the time this bike has been ridden in dry conditions, so there wasn't that much crap behind them, but there was still a little bit from the practice day last Saturday. So once we had the exhaust off and the case savers off, we then set to cleaning the engine. Now there's quite a lot of grime down by the power valve, so we got all that cleaned off with some brake clean. I got in there with the small wire brushes, cleaned it all off. Also checked the wiring to the starter motor to make sure the connection there was still tight. Once I'd got the engine fairly clean, all the dirt off that was there still, and any dirt what was in these wires here, we then started looking at the plugs. Now on the TPIs, the injector plugs have got rubber covers on. You need to be lifting these rubber covers up and having a look inside, because generally they get full of dirt. One of the problems that we do come across when working on these bikes is that you cannot get these plugs off because they're generally covered in mud still. So it's basic stuff is this: pull the rubber cover back and periodically release the plug like that. It should come off fairly easy. Get a bit of WD-40 on it, put it back on. Put your cover back on. That's the injector plugs, an important part. Last thing you want is corrosion in there, because if you do get corrosion, the bike's not going to run properly. Okay. There's also a thermostat plug on top of the cylinder head. Have a look at that, check that, and also the injector on the opposite side. So whilst you're in here, look at the wiring to the fan. If you've got a fan on, make sure that's okay. The plug's still clean. The plug's generally located in the centre of the frame, just tucked away in there generally. Okay, so pull that out. It's a white 2-wired plug. And then while you're here, check the coolant. Yeah, there's plenty of coolant in there. Just look at the wiring on the headstock. Now you'll notice that on my bike I've got this trunking on, quite heavy duty trunking, and that's just to protect the wiring loom, both looms, the lighting loom and the ignition loom. Sometimes on these bikes you get breakages in the wires here, so that's why I put the trunking on, to prevent the wires kinking and bending too much so they won't break over time. So a bit of a turnaround. We've got the ignition side here now. Like before, we checked the injector on this side. We had the ignition cover off. We cleaned behind there, got the dirt out, which was, quite heavily soiled. And then we took the gear shift off. We cleaned that. We also looked at the front sprocket area. Now, there's always a lot of dirt behind the front sprocket. If you don't clean the dirt out behind the front sprocket, two things are going to happen. One, it's going to act like grinding paste on your chain when you're out next riding, so you then sort of shorten the life of your chain. And two, you also might get dirt in the seal on the output shaft, so you might get a premature oil leak there. You don't want that. Just get that area cleaned out, get a screwdriver in there, clean it out. Also get some compressed air or some brake cleaner in there. Even take the front sprocket off if you need to. And while you're there, just check on the front sprocket's wear. See where you are. Does it need a new front sprocket on, or is it still quite good? Just little things what you need to be looking at. Because you've got the exhaust off, it's an absolute ideal time to have a look at your piston. See what your piston rings are like. If you look up the exhaust port, take the spark plug out first so it makes it easier to crank the bike over. See what the piston rings are like. If you can see a lot of black markings under the piston rings, it's a good indication that you might need a new piston in there. Okay, and you can also see into the bore. If you can see the cross hatch markings, the horn marks, as I would call it, inside the cylinder, that tells you that the cylinder is still in good shape. If you see a lot of straight lines in the cylinder, that's a good indication that you've got some excessive wear on the piston. So it might be a good time to start looking at a top-end rebuild before you get any further damage to the engine. And it goes without saying, just check your spark plug as well. If your spark plug's looking like this one, now that spark plug came from a bike we had at Eurotech in for a piston change. The compression was low, fuel and oil mixture wasn't burning correctly. The spark plug in this bike's done 40 hours, or it had done, so I've changed the spark plug. I've got a new plug in there now. These bikes seem to be compression dependent. If you have a low compression in the cylinder, the chances are your bike won't be running properly. So that's a telltale sign. If your bike's not running properly, check the compression first to give you an indication of where you are. Okay. So that's the engine. I'm quite happy with that. So just a little bit of a recap of what we've done so far. We've checked the coolant, we've checked all the electrics, making sure there's no chaffed wires. We've looked at the injector plugs, we looked at the thermostat switch plug on top of the cylinder. Just have a good overall look at everything. Make sure everything's clean. If something looks dirty, then do something about it. Get it cleaned out. Have a look at the fuel pump connector. Make sure that's okay. Now, one of the things what attracts dirt is when people are filling up the two-stroke tank, they'll just top it up, it'll overflow, and all that two-stroke generally runs down the frame into the electrics. And do they clean it? No, they don't. They just leave it, and that attracts dirt. The dirt sticks to the two-stroke oil, and it makes a right oily mess. It's awful. So get the thing clean. If you don't clean it, the dirt will start rubbing into things, it'll start wearing things, it'll wear your paint quickly. The cleaner this bike is, the longer it will last you. So we're now moving back a bit into the sort of airbox area and the throttle body. Have a look at the throttle body. Okay, is it dirty? Does it need cleaning? Does that cover need taking off and inspecting behind it? Because that's another area what attracts dirt in there. Take it off. If you can, unplug the plug. Make sure the plug's clean. Bit of WD-40 or some contact spray in there, some electrical spray, just to keep things nice and sweet. Air filters. What can I say about air filters? Well, if you've got an air filter and it looks like one of these I'm going to show you now, you need beating with a big stick, big time. No excuse for changing air filters. Change it every ride if it needs it, yeah? Over the last few weeks when I was riding this bike down at the field in those really dry conditions, I was changing the air filter after every ride. It's got to be done. I can't underestimate it. If you've got dirt going into that inlet manifold, particularly on a two-stroke bike, you're going to get premature wear on the cylinder. You get dirt in there and it's going to pick up, and before you know it, you've got a seized up bike. Okay, so I can't emphasise enough, clean air filters, get in there, get to know what's in your airbox, electrical wise. On TPIs, any TPI bike, on the 4-stroke bikes, well, the fuel injected bikes, particularly on the, well, from 17 onwards that I'm aware of. I think some of the earlier bikes have relays as well. I'm not really au fait with them, but I'm more familiar with the 17 on bikes. They've generally got 3 relays. If you've got a fan, which I have, that is a fan relay. It's generally on the outside. The centre relay will be your lighting relay that control your lights, brake lights, headlight, all that sort of stuff. Horn. And then you'll have a third relay, which is on the opposite side of the airbox. Generally, you can't see that because it's quite hidden by the air filter, and that's the starter relay. Okay, these get neglected, and generally they're just not touched. People don't know what they are, they don't know what they do, and then at some point or other they'll be out riding the bike, or the bike's been stood for a while, they'll go back to it, it won't start, or the battery's dead. What's wrong? Well, the chances are the relay's gone down, and it's either drained the battery or it won't allow the bike to start, one or the other. So you need to look at these relays, take them out, clean them, look at the contacts. Is there any corrosion in there? If there's corrosion in there, do something about it. Put a new connector on if need be. If you don't know how to do that, again, speak to somebody that knows how to do it. Look at what's on top of the airbox. You've got your ECU, your main engine control unit here. Let's unplug it. That's the ECU. Okay. What's underneath it? Well, we've got a fuse box. Do you know where your fuse box is? You need to know where the fuses are on the bike. Again, it can be a simple thing. If you're out on the trails and your lights stop working, you need your light, your fan stops working, or the bike will not start, the first thing to check is the fuse box. There are 4 fuses in there, and there's also 2 spares. It might just be a simple case of changing a fuse. If you change your fuse and it blows again quickly, then you might have a short somewhere. You might have a broken wire in the headstock or somewhere else. You might have a fault. Now, I have seen it on one occasion where a fuse was blowing continually. It turned out to be a faulty speedo. That's what was causing the short circuit. That took quite a bit of diagnosing that. But the bike did run. It was just that the lights wouldn't work. The lighting circuit kept blowing, and that was down to a faulty speedo. What's next to your battery? This little square block here, that's your start solenoid. That is the device what connects the power to your starter motor. Okay. If your bike won't start but it's clicking, it might be that your solenoid's gone down. Yeah, so you might need new start solenoid. So that's just something to bear in mind. If the bike's going to be stood for a while, take the battery out and put it somewhere warm or some room temperature and have it on a trickle charge. Just keep it just keep the battery in good condition. You'll notice on my bike that I've got some additional wires, and I've also got this here. This is a capacitor, and that's in the event of the battery going flat, so I can still get the bike to start. Okay, and that's what these blue wires are under here. I've also got 3 additional earth straps on. Now, sometimes the earth straps can go faulty on these bikes, so I've got 2 from the battery to the subframe. And I've also got a 3rd earth strap from the battery under the ECU to the bolt which holds the oil tank on, just so the bike's got good earth from the power source. We'll just put the ECU back on. So another quick turnaround again there, looking at the other side of the bike. If your battery box and ECU area looks something like this, what I'm going to show you now, then again you need beating with a big stick. That was a bike that came in for repair. The bike wasn't running properly, and it's no wonder it wasn't running properly because it was neglected to quite a big degree. It turned out the relays had gone down because of all that dirt and corrosion. The airbox was an absolute mess, a lot of mud in there, and the relays had corroded, and that's why it wouldn't start. It wasn't running. The lights weren't working, and the bike wouldn't start off the button either. Once we got it all cleaned and new relays in there, and all the connections cleaned up, it was fine. It was perfect. Nothing wrong with it. But because of that contamination, that caused the problems. So that's the electric sorted out. We then looked at the rear shock, got the rear shock out. The thing I like about the KTM is the PDS, 2 bolts, the shock's out, you can clean it quite quickly. You can also get to the intake boot as well and give that a good clean and wipe down. If you don't do that, the dirt will build up again and it'll start rubbing on the paint and the shock absorber. You might even get some of the plastics worn. You might get a hole in some of the plastics if it gets quite grimy under there. So get that area clean. And while we're in this area, we can look at the throttle body. See the 2 throttle cables come down into the main sort of inlet manifold throttle body area here. Control point. Take the plastic cover off. Have a look at it. It's a T20 screw that holds it on, and a little plastic tab underneath. Just flick that, and the cover will come off. Now I've used some clear silicone just to seal it to prevent dirt getting in there. But if you don't take this off and look at it periodically, it can get full of dirt. And then at some point you might be thinking, throttle sticking. Why is it sticking? If you don't clean that area out, what's going to happen is the dirt will pick up onto the cables, and as you're operating the throttle, it will gradually pull it back into the inner cable. So as it's working backwards and forwards, it's also drawing dirt in. And at some point it's going to start getting rusty and it'll start to seize slightly. And that's when you'll get a sticking throttle. Okay, so I can't emphasise enough, clean that area out, do it periodically. And like I've done, try and seal it with some automotive silicone just to prevent all the dirt and water getting in there. As you can see looking at mine, it's still fairly clean. So I've done quite a bit of work there already in this sort of central area. I then started putting the bike sort of back together, put the casings back on, the gear shift and also the exhaust. Before you put the exhaust back on, check the O-rings to make sure the O-rings are in good condition. If you've got oil and petrol mixture dribbling down the front of your engine onto your exhaust, making a right sticky mess, you know you've got a bit of a problem. The chances are it's just the seals what have gone. If you replace those seals and it's still leaking petrol and oil mixture from the front of the engine, then you've got a bigger issue. It could be that the exhaust port is excessively worn. And if that's the case, then they are quite expensive to replace. So every time you wash the bike, take the exhaust off and have a quick look at them. For the time it takes, it's well worth doing. So quite a bit of work there, at least a couple of hours work doing what we've done. Treat this bike like a good woman. The more TLC you give it, the more you'll get out of it, the more hours of fun you will have on it. Okay, so that's about it from me at the moment. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at taking the back wheel out, checking the PDS bushes, wheel bearings in the back, and doing some final checks. So from me, that's about it at the moment. Stay tuned. Hard Enduro Media, Eurotech KTM, and Luke Scioli. See you soon.